Greetings, gamers. It's Adam with ArcadeHeroes.com, and I guess mic check. In case you can't hear me, let me know, and I will see what I can do to adjust this. But from what I tested beforehand, it sounded fine. But here to discuss the latest arcade news that came out of Japan this weekend, and that would be, of course, Evo Japan, which was held from the 27th until the 29th. I mean, it's the 29th for me, but in the western United States, it's already, I think, over in Japan or close to it. I know the event is over. Anyways, there was a lot of arcade news that came out of it. Now, oftentimes I haven't covered a lot on Evo just because most of the time, even though the games that they're covering, like Tekken and Street Fighter and such, originated in arcades, they don't have a whole lot to do with arcades anymore. I mean, for the most part, they just, they're if they use arcades, it's generally a prop to get people to buy the console version and such. But of course, with Street Fighter 6, there is an arcade version that's available not only in Japan. It's called Street Fighter 6 Type Arcade, and that version has come out to Round 1 USA. I have no clue how well it is doing at Round 1. And an operator like myself, I mean, I was contacted by a couple of different people asking if I was interested in getting Type 6 arcade, but I mean, not at the price that they would want it for, because as I've recounted many times before, when a fighting game is available in the same way, or maybe even has less content than the home console version, nobody comes to play it. And when they want $10,000, $15,000, $16,000 for a joystick game like that, it's just a DOA to me. But I know there are some locations out there like Arcade UFO where that sort of thing would probably work, but it's so niche as to where it does and doesn't work that it's just, again, for the price, it's not worth it. But Vincent, thanks for joining us on the live stream here in the chat. I'm doing all right. A little bit sleepy, so apologies if I sound a little drowsy. But yeah, we're getting along all right. And so let's dive in a little bit first to... so I just posted this on Arcade Heroes, but much of the writing here was done by Ted. And so salute to you, sir. And this does get into a little bit of the Tekken stuff that was there. And so I was sent some photos of this before it was fully set up, before the marquees were on it. And they even looked behind the machines to show that they had some PC towers sitting right behind these. And so really these, again, were just set up as props as for promoting Tekken 8 and not actual Tekken 8 arcade cabinets. Now these are the same arcade cabinets that Tekken 7 arcade was available in, but they just didn't, yeah, like I said, they put some PCs behind it, had some USB game pads. I think I saw a photo or two where it showed an USB arcade stick, but I don't know, that's just weird. I thought you could connect these normal control panels up to USB if you needed to as well, but I guess not. But for the winner of the Tekken 8 tournament, it was a player by the name of Chikuden. Guess if we popped over here, and this is where he won that. Not sure how loud that is, but... So I guess he was playing as Lily. Beautiful looking game. And that was it. That was the moment he took the Tekken 8 crown. So nice. If we pop back over to the post, I thought it was going to open in a new tab. But apparently not. Yeah, he's on Twitter there too. And then if we get here, we have the gameplay trailer for Street Fighter 6's Akuma. Guess I better bring that down, otherwise YouTube's gonna ding me hard. How dare I play a YouTube video on YouTube? Should we watch this faster? I haven't watched this yet. Actually, I haven't played Street Fighter 6 yet either. But I know they showed this trailer off to the crowd there. Where I'm sure they were able to get a great reaction, like a nice cheering moment right there a moment ago. Probably lots of clapping. There's your Tekken, or Street Fighter Cross Tekken in a way. Or which one of those? I know Street Fighter Cross Tekken came out, but wasn't it Tekken Cross Street Fighter that didn't? Man, Ryu's just getting tortured. For the Street Fighter 6 Championship, there is a Dominican Republic user by the name of Mena RD who took that championship there. I guess if we pop over here really quick and see that. So yeah, he would also be player number 2 there and playing as Blanca. I always have a soft spot in my heart for Blanca because as I remember the very first time I came across Street Fighter 2 way back in like 91, 92, whenever it was, at an ice cream parlor and asked for a quarter so that I could play it. Blanca was the first one I picked. So nice. Congrats to Mena RD, who's here on Twitter as well. Looks like he has a pretty strong following of players. That from what this tweet also mentions, he's the only 2-time Capcom Cup champion and an Evo champion now as he wins Street Fighter 6. Is Tekken 8 getting an arcade cabinet? No. So as I mentioned a moment ago, let me pop back over here. So this setup that was there, it was really just a prop for showing off Tekken 8, but I've heard no official announcements from people that I talked with who were at the show. This, again, was just being set up to show off Tekken 8. Now, why Bandai Namco doesn't take advantage of the arcade fervor that exists with this, I have no idea. Why they do that is possibly, if I was to guess, just because they probably make more money off of the console release. And while the arcade version does help them sell more console units, if they do an arcade release, they kind of need to wait. If they want any arcade operators to buy it, like spend $15,000, $18,000 on a pair of these, then arcade operators like myself kind of want to make our money back. We don't want to just throw it away and flush it down the toilet, but that's kind of what happens when you have a console version release, say, right at the exact same time, especially if the console version's better, say it has more content or something like that. So yeah, it sucks, but that's just the reality. The economics of the arcade industry are much different from the console industry, and so oftentimes where I've seen people complain about what games look like, say if you take a cheap Steam game and put it into the arcade, they're like, well, this game should only cost what it costs for Steam. Well, again, the economics of the arcade industry are completely different from what you do in the home console world. I mean, for one, you only can sell, most games these days might sell several hundred units. A really good one will sell in the thousands, but there's just no way you're ever going to have an arcade game be able to outsell the console version, and that's just due to the physics and the economics of the situation. You only have so many arcades out there. I mean, yes, there are more arcades out there than people realize, but you still have a much more limited pool of buyers than that. And of course, every single arcade's not going to buy every single game. And to also give you an idea, whereas console games can sell in the millions, the arcades, like the best-selling arcade game of all time, I believe, is Miss Pac-Man, and either Pac-Man or Miss Pac-Man. And the numbers that I've been able to find on those is neither one cracked 300,000 units. Now, it is super impressive that either one sold over, I think, over like 250,000 each. But again, that was back in the super heyday of arcades where you could literally find them everywhere. At every convenience store, anywhere that had a waiting area, you could find an arcade machine. But of course, that was a bubble, and when it burst, a lot of those people went out of business. And so that's again, this is probably why you don't see Bandai Namco pushing Tekken very much in the arcade scene, because that's another thing too, is a light gun game or a driving game is going to sell a lot better than any joystick game that's out there. And just with joystick games, there's just not a huge difference between what you get in the arcade and the console. Now, yes, you do get the community that when you're playing against somebody that's standing right next to you, it is a better experience than playing over the internet against some rando. But that's not enough to bring most people in. Now, I do see there in the chat how you mention their Shmup Room mentions Tekken 8 and Street Fighter 6 are supposed to be pretty laggy, which of course is not great for a fighter. Now, as I'm going to get into here in a few minutes with EXA Arcadia, that's something they've been working really hard on to make sure that the input lag is as low as is possible. But it's still, even if the arcade version has lower input lag, for your normal person that just walks into an arcade, like I see every single day where they're just walking by and like, oh, an arcade, and they walk in and maybe they like video games, but they're not like super into it. They don't realize what input lag is. If they go and put in a quarter into Street Fighter 2, they don't care. They probably never even heard of it. And so that's something for hardcore players that they understand. But again, will hardcore players go out en masse to an arcade to go play that version? From what I've seen, from one of my own experiences from Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition, they will only when they can't get it at home, but otherwise they don't. But hope that answered your question, All World Freak 23. On the Tekken 8 getting an arcade cabinet. And yes, everything I heard from Evo this year is that it was excellent. And yes, it would be cool to get a new Virtua Fighter. I've heard rumors that there is another Virtua Fighter in the works, but that it would only be going to consoles, not arcades. But who knows? Sega could always change their mind if they wish. Well, just so you know, this cabinet you see right here, this is not an official Tekken 8 cabinet. What they did was they rebranded a Tekken 7 arcade cabinet, and the game that was running here that was seen at Evo, right behind this picture were a couple of PCs. And so those game pads that you see, they were connected to the PC behind it. So this, again, is not an official thing. This was just set up as a prop for the show. So Tekken 8, from what Bandai Namco has, well, really not said so far, they are not doing an arcade version of this at this time. Now, could they change their mind? Sure. But yes, they were running Tekken 8 on Steam off of that. So we already watched the Akuma trailer and talked about that. So let's actually backtrack a little bit. So, as some of you might have seen already, there were a lot of our new arcade game announcements to come out of Evo Japan. Now, this is unusual. Usually with Evo, we just see console fighters and such. We don't see brand new coin-operated arcade machines that could go into an actual arcade like the one that I'm standing in right now. But thanks to a company known as EXA Arcadia, they revealed several new games, and so that's what we're going to get into right now. And because EXA is mainly operating out of Japan, it's essentially their backyard, they set up this booth that you can see here. So they had several candy cabinets set up in Versus style for people to enjoy their various games. If you've not seen, or if you've not heard about EXA Arcadia, let me jump over here really quick. So their website's exa.ac, and so they've had their platform, which is kind of like the Neo Geo. It actually has cartridge slots, and you can put up to 4 cartridges into it. It is a PC that it's running off of. But because of them, they've been able to bring back fighting games into the arcade. And in the arcade where I'm at right now, if I pointed the camera at it, you wouldn't see, but I have 3 EXA Arcadia cabinets. I have one out of a deal that I'm doing with them for marketing. And I'm actually going to be posting some videos soon showing more stuff about this cabinet. It's called the Arc 1 cabinet. And has some different games in there. But as you can see just from their website, these are all the games that were just announced. And so, I'll be getting more into this. But again, for those of you who haven't heard of who they are, I mean, look at all the other games that they've already released. I mean, there are some that haven't been released yet, like Demon Bride X Again, and Cambria Sword and Jam Jam and Jelly and such. But you can see right here where it says available 2024 means it hasn't been released yet, but all the other ones that say available now have. I used to have Aka and Blue Type R. I have Dodon Patchy True Death Exa Label and Blazing Chrome AC, Vritra Hexa. I have Chaos Code, Kung Fu vs. Karate Champ. Let's see. I used to have Lightning Knights. I have Nippon Marathon Turbo. And let's see. I have Donut Dodo Do. Thought about Axel City and Dynamite Bomb. Probably going to get Omen of Sorrow. And yeah, that kind of covers what I've got there. But thanks to EXA Arcadia, this is where we get a bunch of these announcements. Now, again, if you go to arcadeheroes.com, there's 3 days worth of coverage, and the first 2 days get into EXA Arcadia, and they held a live stream. Hold on one second. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine. I can't do a live stream without, in my arcade without some interruptions.
Your asteroids getting any better?
Nope. They made 650 last week. So they're actually going to be pulling it out and replacing it with a 2-player model, but also bringing in an Avian Knights. But they're convinced that it's because of the coin glitch, but it's like, from both Ben and I have observed, there's lots of people that just don't even look at it. They just walk by, and so it's like I was going to move it to a different spot in the arcade, like over by Miss Pac-Man and stuff, and see if that might help it out. But just like we want to change out the cabinet, so yeah.
Get all of it in here?
Probably not. So we can get this number and then do the rest, I guess.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I need a bigger bowl. I need to calibrate it to a bigger bowl. 262.
Okay, 262. Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Just doing some business stuff there. But, and good evening, or to me it's 12:25, so good afternoon, I guess, from the U.S., from this side of the pond. But, yeah, I mean, I have regular contact with people in the UK. I know that things are tough over there for the arcade scene. I mean, there still are arcades, but I don't know how many out there regularly focus on getting brand new games. I know Sega has their prize zones where they just mainly do redemption stuff. Bandai Namco's been trying this new store concept, which has a few new games in there, but it's obviously focused on redemption stuff. Now, of course, that's often. I have a video about this, but the lamentation that often comes from gamers is, why are there no new fighting games in arcades? And that's, as I've laid out in that video, and I'll try not to labor the point too much, is that just they're not profitable in modern arcades, and that's because pretty much every single one gets a console port. And the moment that it's available on consoles, most of the guys who would come out and actually put money into a cabinet don't. They stay home and they play the game at home. Now, there are a few people here and there that will be like, I like playing in the arcade more than I like playing at home, but that number is so small that it just makes it so that it's hard for a fighter to be profitable up against, say, a stupid ticket redemption machine or a coin pusher. Or I know in the UK you guys have something called fruit machines, which I never played one of those. We don't have those here. If we do, they don't exist in my state. And so, yeah, unfortunately, that's how it is. And so, in my opinion, as an arcade operator, if you had a fighting game that was exclusive to arcades, or at least a version where it has some exclusive characters to it, that might be enough to bring people out. But of course, it also needs to have a big name to it. And so, it's a little bit of a dilemma. But in case you are interested in going back and watching through the EXA Arcadia tournaments that were held, they did some live streams, and so you can go through those. This one was almost 12 hours long. And so they held tournaments on Arcana Heart 3, which is available on the EXA Arcadia, and Chaos Code, and a bunch of others. I've heard of Code of Joker, but I've never played it. I've never seen one out here in the States. But I guess, really quick, going back to the EXA Arcadia platform, is that it does allow arcades anywhere, whether you're in the UK or other parts of Europe, if you're in the United States, South America, pretty much anywhere on the planet that doesn't that isn't like North Korea, you can get the EXA Arcadia games. And so that also seems to be a common misconception, is people think that, these are only for Japan, because most of the time when there's a new fighting game announcement, it's only in Japan. But again, EXA Arcadia is available pretty much worldwide. And so if you have the money to get a arcade machine with an EXA board in it, or buy the EXA board itself and convert a machine over to it. You can buy the cartridges. There are different distributors for EXA all around the world. In Europe, it's one called Red Sun Systems. In the US, there's a few different ones like ABS companies, I think Primetime Amusements, and a couple of others. And then Japan also has their own exclusive distributors that will not only sell the cartridges, but sell artwork specific to the game there. And so, you've got that there. Oops. It actually needs to recalibrate with the bowl here.
Oh, is this the wrong bowl?
Well, it's the right bowl. It's just when it's booting up, it needs that. Otherwise, it's just going to freak out. 186.
There's still a little bit more too.
Okay. Guess I should calibrate it without that little dish on there. Gotcha. 153.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem.
What was that? 186.
153 and then 186. Yeah. All right. So let me just catch up on the chat here. I also assume everybody's hearing me okay. Minecraft Dungeons. And so the version of Minecraft Dungeons is completely different from the console and PC version. And so the developers of that one, Play Mechanics, I mean, they reused certain... Actually, I think from what they told me, they built the assets from scratch. And so it really just shares the same name, but it's not the same game. And the way it plays is completely different from the console version. They did just release Series 3 cards for it. I haven't got my box yet, but I actually haven't ordered it yet because money's been a little tight. But I'll be doing that pretty soon. But it's done okay. But I've heard of other places. There's an arcade operator that is here in Utah where I'm at, where they said it's been doing fantastic. He's in a nickel arcade environment though, so he's obviously being able to charge a lot less for it, but he also has like an entry fee to get in there. But he says that's been one of his best games. I've heard some other places where they say it hasn't done too great. For me, it's been very inconsistent. And so some weeks it does amazing, and then other weeks it does terrible. So it's just kind of all over the place. But I think there's a misconception that a lot of parents have. Like all the time I'll see a little kid go up and say, hey, it's Minecraft. And then their father says, or their mother is like, we have Minecraft at home. We don't need to play that. And so that just gets into one of those things where it's like, with joystick games, it's kind of hard to get it pushed forward. But let's get into some of the other new arcade things that was announced at Evo Japan. And so the first one we'll cover here is EXA Arcadia's ARC32 cabinet. Now, as I mentioned, I have what's called their ARC1, which is built here in the United States out of Ohio, actually. But the ARC32, let me zoom out here for a moment, is a Japanese sit-down cabinet. Now, they do have a riser that can be installed on the bottom of it to make it more like an upright cabinet. I've already heard of some arcades here in the States, and when they saw this, were very interested and wanted to invest in one. I have not heard what the price is on these yet. There's this tweet in Japanese from EXA Arcadia that also shows it. And so you can actually easily convert the monitor between being in vertical orientation or horizontal orientation, and it just pops out. You can see that it has these panels here in case you decide to do the Tate mode for it, and then you just move those panels over there. And so I'm not sure where they're manufacturing these, but again, this is coming later this year. For the details, so this can use Sanwa or Seimitsu controls. It has 0.3 frames of input lag, JVS wiring standard, and a fast input-output board, which is designed by EXA Arcadia themselves. It has a 32-inch 1080p monitor with 1 millisecond lag. Already mentioned how you can change the orientation, and on the ARC1 you can also change the orientation. I'm going to be posting a video sometime soonish where I show how you can change that monitor around. And so there's that. It has 4 speakers with a line out as well as headphone outputs, and so headphone outputs are a pretty big deal in Japan. But you can see on the control panel here where you have those, plus their own independent volume controls. You can set it up with a 2-player control panel, as you see here, or you can do a single-player control panel and do versus style, so that, like in Japan, that's a big thing. Oh, sure. Then has lighting below the control panel, and it's again launching later this year. And so yeah, for anybody who really wanted to see EXA Arcadia have a Japanese style cabinet, there you go. So they have that. They have an American style wooden cabinet, and both come with a bunch of features. 200 on that one.
200?
Yeah. And so, again, don't know what pricing is on this yet. This actually was supposed to come to Amusement Expo, but because of boat shipping delays, they were unable to, they figured they wouldn't get there in time, and so they decided, we'll just hold this over for Evo Japan. So, what other new games? As I mentioned, here you got a bunch of games already available for the EXA Arcadia. And so they announced that they are going to be able to, or they announced several new games for it. So, first off is Asuka 120% Excellent. It is pretty common that EXA Arcadia, they will add something in the title that's referring to themselves there. Yes, Oddworld. You can find Arcade Heroes on Facebook, Discord, and Instagram. I don't use Instagram much because you can't do links there, and so that makes it a little bit tough. But yeah, you can find us pretty much anywhere. I'm on X as well. I've even tried some of the oddball social media sites out there. I do a bit of stuff on LinkedIn as well, but. So we didn't get a whole lot of, well, we didn't get any footage here of Asuka, but for those who might be familiar with the series, this is, from what I'm told, this is where the whole idea of girl-on-girl fighting game, 2D fighting games came from. And so did start off way back in 1994 on the Sharp X68000 and the FM Towns. There were some releases on the PlayStation, original PlayStation, but the version that most people are into, or most fans are into, was on the Sega Saturn. From again, what I was told is that the PlayStation version was not done by the original creators of the game, whereas the Sega Saturn version was. And so this is going to be essentially a director's cut of the Sega Saturn version, and there was an arcade version in the works way back, but it never came out. But they have brought back the original series designer, Masatoshi Imaizumi, to supervise that development, and also Keishi Yonao for the music. Now, another thing that I should stress before I get into more of these games is that EXA Arcadia is actually the ones that does the coding work and the new artwork on these games. Now, oftentimes they will try, if they're available, to get somebody or several people who worked on the original game to help them in the development of it, but it's actual EXA Arcadia people who are doing all the coding and bug fixes and artwork and all that sort of stuff. Again, unless they were able to get one of the artists from the original development teams on there to help them in that. But if you go to a lot of these games here on the EXA Arcadia website, click on it and you scroll down, you'll notice oftentimes it mentions licensor and then whoever it is that owns the IP, but then developer, EXA Arcadia team, EXA-AM, whatever. They have AM 1 through 6. I think even up to 7. But just so you're aware, and I'm actually going to be doing a behind-the-scenes thing on EXA Arcadia here soon, so that people can see that and they realize that these games, what goes into crafting these new versions of these games. But again, they are developed to try and make the ultimate version of the game, whichever one it is, when they're taking something that was old and giving it a new shirt, so to speak. Next up was Axel City 2, The Final Storm. And so Axel City 2 has actually been around for a little bit. Just muting these just so that YouTube doesn't slap me down here. But Axel City 2, 2D fighting game, been out for a little while. I've heard this is done exceptionally well in Japan. In fact, from what I've been told, is that there are some locations that have Axel City 2 and Street Fighter 6 type arcade, and Axel City 2 makes more money than Street Fighter 6 does, which is a little bit shocking, because obviously this does not look anywhere near as good as Street Fighter 6. But sometimes, I guess, just in certain places, certain cultures, they maybe are compelled more by something like this that's more retro. But I haven't heard of anywhere here in the States that has an Axel City 2 yet. I've thought about it. I just haven't been sure, and my money's been a little tight as it is anyways. But The Final Storm is an update. It's a paid update, so if you're an arcade operator like myself and you have an Axel City 2, you'd have to send the cartridge into them, which that's not the greatest system out there, unfortunately. I believe they keep it offline for security purposes, but you send your cartridge in, it gets the update once you paid for it, and then it adds 10 new characters to the mix, new music as well, new stages. And so just basically kind of like how Street Fighter 3 had its what was the first one was called the New Challengers, and then you had Second Impact, and then you had crap, how am I forgetting the name of the third one? I should know this. Somebody remind me in chat, or I'll remember it at a random time sometime later. But anyways, it's major update to it, and so oh yeah, and that's another thing too that EXA does is they like to bring in a lot of new voice actors to give the characters something to say. And so now if you don't have an Axel City 2, I would say wait. Say if you're interested in getting one, then I'd say wait for when this is available. Then you don't have to send your cartridge anywhere. You just get it with the update installed already. And so that's probably what I would do if I was going to be getting this sometime in the future. Third Strike, thank you. It's like I feel embarrassed when I forget simple details like that. But whether or not there will be a Third Strike type update for Axel City 2, I guess it just depends on how well Final Storm does. But again, I have heard that at least in Japan, this game kills it. Now, here's one that did get an announcement that got a lot of attention. And funny thing is I got to play this. I've known about this for more than a year. So at Amusement Expo 2023, I got to play this. Now, it was so early that it was just the Neo Geo MVS version. They hadn't changed anything about it yet. But when I got to play it at Amusement Expo 2024 back in March of this year, there was already some changes. But even between what I played and what was shown at Evo Japan, there was more differences than that. In fact, some of you might have noticed on my channel here that I posted this video, but I forgot to add the little disclaimer about it being an early work in progress. So like one of the things that Breaker's Revenge Chicago has are like artwork panels, and the artwork on this screen is different as well for what's going to be the final build. But again, this is the version that I got to play. I guess I should be showing the trailer first. So let's check that out. Now, for any of you who are wondering why they call it Breaker's Revenge Chicago, is that actually was the prototype name for the original Breaker's Revenge back in the day. And then before Visco released it, they decided to remove Chicago from it. Maybe because it doesn't really have much to do with Chicago, I don't know. But I actually have Breaker's Revenge on my Neo Geo MVS. It's sitting over here. If you've never played it before, because it is a little bit more of an obscurity among fighters out there. And sorry, this was in potato quality. Okay, there we go. It's like Street Fighter 2, but just a little bit deeper. It has the a breaker system to cancel attacks and dash cancels and things like that. And yeah, I saw that too, that, yeah, there was a lot of people in Japan that were very interested in this. Again, I'm not sure how many fans for this game are out there in the States. I know there are a few, because when I was at California Extreme back in 2018, that's when I first heard about it. I was overhearing a conversation of a guy explaining what Breaker's Revenge was to another guy. And that's what got me interested in it. But even from this trailer, you can see versus the version that I got to play below, like every time you choose a character, it has an art panel on the side. And so, and no censorship there. I've seen a lot of videos lately about different games getting censored there. But that's one thing EXA Arcadia does not do, is there's no censorship on their games. Sorry to be eating during a live stream. It's rude of me. But not sure when this is coming out, what its price might be. I would assume it would be in the realm of $1,200 to $1,500. Now, again, if that price sounds shocking to you, EXA is not pricing this for home users. They're pricing it for arcade operators like myself. And what arcade operators look for is usually a game that can pay itself off in less than a year. And so if it can do that, then a price like $1,500 does not sound shocking at all. It sounds great, because most of the games out there that I have to spend money on, they cost $15,000 or $20,000 or $25,000 or even $50,000. And so when I hear a price like $1,500, I'm just like, cool. But online, I constantly see people, why is it not $60 or $10? And it's like, well, again, you don't get the economics of the arcade business and why they're different. I mean, you could factor power consumption in, but it's not as big a thing. I mean, it's like when you're running an arcade, yes, you have to take into consideration everything: your rent, your electricity, your insurance, your taxes, your wages, maintenance costs, new equipment purchases. You need all of those costs have to be covered by the games that you bring in, and so you make your decisions based on what's going to get played, what are people going to put money into. If I buy something that nobody plays, then yeah, it's wasting my time as it's not paying my bills on all those things that I need to pay. But if I get something that people really put money into, not only does it pay itself off, it helps pay for the other bills. But it's a little bit hard. I don't know that there's any like formula where you can just plug all these numbers into it and get your magic numbers as to what you need. But yeah, it's a consideration. 1 second.
It's not good today. It's 123.
Wow.
So, it's
It
like-
was a busy weekend.
It was. So the duck catcher and the Navi balls did great. The Esky didn't because it was all tokens. No, it was all tokens. That's why. And then I'm assuming the Esky didn't do good because Ben put on that sign. No tokens there, but other machines did amazing.
Well, I did order some tokens, so we should have those hopefully this week.
Yeah.
That won't be an issue anymore.
I know.
think
how
that's right.
Yeah, the expenses just keep adding up, right?
Yeah, especially being tax season, where it's like you have to pay all this stuff for taxes and whatnot.
Yeah.
So that's the sucky thing.
Yep, I get it. So, all right, I'll see you next week.
Okay, see ya. So, hope that answered that question there. But again, just when I see people complaining about pricing on arcade machines, it's just like the EXA Arcadia is not a super console. It's not being marketed towards home users. Yes, it wants gamers like yourselves to come out to an arcade and play it, and that's kind of the purpose. Is it's to try and get you to go to an arcade, support your local arcades. Now, I get it. Not everybody has an arcade near them, but that's why they do things in that way. So let's. I did get to play Super Hydora back in 2018, I think it was, at California Extreme, but no, I'm not sure why that did not get released. That would have been a nice, like, Darius style game, or Gradius style, sorry. But yeah, I'm not sure why that one got canceled. And so, yeah, and that has happened with a few games. I think there was one called My Slam and Jam that was also supposed to come out on EXA, but that was just removed from their site. There was Devil's Engine, but that was there was something that went on with somebody who was involved on the team that caused a big problem, and so yeah, I don't know all the details on that. But sorry, back to Breaker's Revenge Chicago. But yeah, I do appreciate the questions, and so even though I love going off on tangents, but so thank you for those. But I guess getting back to Breaker's Revenge, so the key art is done by Motoki Yoshihara, who I believe worked on the original Breaker's Revenge. As you saw in the early part of my video here, if we go back, so you can choose Revenge, Chicago, or Extra Style of play. And Revenge plays just like Breaker's Revenge did. Chicago is a new style, and then Extra is another new one that they're integrating into it. And it has 0.3 frames of input lag, so it's like everything I've heard about this from serious game players, again, is that every EXA game plays so fast and so smooth. And like I've noticed that, even though I'm not like super into the input lag thing, like I got Samurai Showdown Collection for the Nintendo Switch, and I played Samurai Showdown 5 Perfect on that, and then I played Samurai Showdown 5 Perfect on the arcade here, and I did notice the difference in speed between the two. But again, most casual people that go into an arcade don't notice that sort of thing. But then Breaker's Revenge Chicago is going to have a newly arranged soundtrack by the game's original composer, Kenichi Kamiyo. And so, who in chat is looking forward to Breaker's Revenge Chicago when that comes along? Oh, and thank you. Got a super chat from Bushin Ryu Cats for $5. Thank you very much for that. What was my favorite arcade I enjoyed visiting? Way back in the day, the company still exists here in Utah. But when I was a teenager, I remember going to a place called Nickelcade with my friend, and actually, we would go about this time of year when school was getting out. And I remember just spending an entire day there. And that was the first time I came across games like Gauntlet Legends and T-Mech, Die Hard Arcade, Black Tiger, a few others, and had some good memories. Now, I don't say this because they're technically a competitor, but like last time I went there, it was in dismal condition. A lot of the games just weren't well taken care of. Now, it's been years since I've been there, so they might have been able to fix that up, but yeah, it was sad to me. I don't like to dunk on anybody else's, but oh, you meant in Japan? I've not been in. I actually did not get to go to Japan for Evo, so apologies. I guess I should have mentioned that. I've not been to Japan yet. I'd love to go to Japan, and if the day that I get to go there, I'm not sure which place I'm going to try and get to as many arcades as I can, but I probably won't be going alone. Probably go with family, and they'll want to do other things other than just go to arcades there. Now, one thing, I guess, so you're aware, where I live in Utah, it's one of, I think, 2 states in the country that completely ban every form of gambling. So here in Utah, we don't even have a lottery. There's no gambling whatsoever. And there have been a few people who've tried to have gambling machines in the back of their laundromat or weird things like that before. But they always get caught. They always get shut down. And so unless the laws of Utah were to change, it's like, yeah, it's never really crossed my mind trying to run one past the state. Just because, again, you're going to get caught, and so it's not worth it to me. But yeah, I guess in the story, thanks for pointing it out. I'll go back and edit in the story that I did not get a chance to go to Evo. I wish I did. That would have been awesome. And from what I understand too, right now is a fantastic time of year to be visiting Japan. And so, yeah, I definitely want to visit some Taito stations, some Gigos. I've been invited, if I ever do get over to Japan, to visit Sega's HQ and get a tour there. So I really look forward to doing that. So when it happens, we'll be optimistic. I'll definitely film some stuff from my trip and see what I can do. And I will not be one of those idiot YouTubers that tries to get all foreigners banned from Japan from their idiotic antics. So, next up is Daybreak Slam. And so this is a game that is developed by A1 Games. Now, they have a game that's going to be launching here very soon on the EXA Arcadia. It's already available on the PS4. Called Omen of Sorrow, but the arcade version, it's called The Rising Chaos. From what I know, it doesn't have any additional characters, but it has a faster input lag response time. It has a training mode, new voices and artwork, Japanese localization. It also has some graphical enhancements. I'm not sure why they haven't touted those on the page here, but when I have a video of this on my channel. And one of the things that's kind of hard to come across on pointing a camera at the screen is how the graphic fidelity on the EXA Arcadia version is better than the PS4 version. And so it uses anti-aliasing, and it still maintains the frame rate where it needs to be. And so this is a game, as I mentioned before, I am definitely going to be grabbing this one at some point. Again, I'm not sure if I'll be able to grab it now when it's coming out within the next week or two. But I'm impressed enough with it. And another thing that I've observed with my EXA Arcadias and having 9 games for them is that the game that performs the best is the one that looks the best. Kung Fu versus Karate Champ. That one is kind of like this in graphics style, in that it's 3D environments, 3D modeled characters, but this looks a lot better than Kung Fu does. And so I think with that, that's where it's like, I bet this will do really well just because it looks like a brand new game. And so, again, this one is coming very soon. Yeah. Oh, and sorry, Bush and Ryukat, I didn't catch that part of the question as I was just kind of glazing over. I actually do have stools. I've always liked having little chairs or bar stools here that people can move around. And so I actually do have several of them so that people can feel more comfortable when they're playing at the game. And I do think that it does encourage people to stay longer. I do need to get more of those chairs, but then we have. But yeah, I've long done that because I totally agree with that idea. And I've even been told by some other arcade operators, it's like, I never thought of doing that before. And it's like, I'm surprised because it just makes sense to me that you would want to be able to allow people to have a little bit of comfort there. And yeah, most casinos do have arcades in them. Like you go to Vegas, they have some great arcades there with all that. But anyways, that's Omen of Sorrow. As you could see from the gameplay trailer there, it's a little bit like Killer Instinct. But the developer for that, A1 Games, has announced this new game now called Daybreak Slam. Now, when I first saw this on the list before EXA had showed me what it is, and let's update the resolution. I don't know why everything's going to 360 quality there. But yeah, so this one you're kind of like playing like sort of toys or mechanized things. The story didn't make a lot of sense to me yet, but it's also still early in development. And that's another thing I like to try and throw out there. Please don't make any final judgments on any of the games that have been announced yet because they're not finished yet. And so things can change by the time that they hit production. I mean, obviously they probably won't change completely. Like this won't change into a shoot 'em up or anything, but that if there's little things here that maybe look glitchy or unfinished, that's because, well, it's unfinished. So cut it some slack, I guess you could say. And so that's Daybreak Slam. And again, I did get to play this one at Amusement Expo. Let's zoom ahead here. It's like I saw somebody criticizing the tips that it was putting there. I mean, to me, those looked kind of tongue-in-cheek. It's like, obviously, if you lose, you lose. How to do a jump thing. This also showed a little bit of the test menu there. Gotta love the early 90s style aesthetic going on. That's like straight out of 1991. But yeah, at least from the build that I played, I didn't really catch anything of a storyline. And so it's like that probably hasn't been implemented yet. Or yeah, like jumping attacks can be done while jumping. It's like, I wouldn't be surprised if they end up replacing those with more useful tips. Unless it's like we're just joking. Now, one thing to point out here about Daybreak Slam is this is going to be doing the same kind of thing as Axel City 2. Where they're going to release a new paid season. So if you're an arcade operator and you want to add more fighters to it, then you would do the same thing where you'd have to send in your cartridge and then get the update or pay for it and then get the updated software, which will add more characters, more levels, possibly more music to the game than it had before. Possibly correcting anything else that might have been discovered as a glitch or maybe an infinite juggle sort of game-breaking thing there. But that they will be doing that with Daybreak Slam. But I had fun with this. This one is designed to be more appealing to casual players. So it's like it has 4 buttons, but it's not like super deep. Hi. How can I help you? game that's off that you want to play, let me know. I can turn it on for you. Yeah, you're welcome. Actually, one thing that might surprise you is this: the developers to this are from Chile. They're not from Japan, and so, but they do seem to understand Japanese style. So yeah, that one is coming sometime this year, and I guess that's all we had for today, or for the first day of the show. So again, Asuka 120% excellent, which from what EXA tells me is their most watched video on X. So they seems like the interest, at least in Japan, there is more for that one. Axel City 2, The Final Storm, Breaker's Revenge Chicago, and then Daybreak Slam. But again, that's not all that was announced. So if we jump over to day 2, then we have even more news to share on Evo Japan. And so Breaker's Revenge Chicago is not the only Neo Geo MVS originating game that's going to get a remake for modern arcades, as we have Rage of the Dragons W. Now, W is a nod to Double Dragon. From what I'm told in Japanese, it has the connotation of being double. We call it W anyways, so W, Double Dragon, get it? But that's also because Rage of the Dragons was started off, by my understanding, as it started off as a Double Dragon game, but then it turned into its own fighter. But to your question, Bushin, is that no beat 'em ups. There is a beat 'em up that's in the works for the EXA. I did shoot some video of it at Amusement Expo, but I didn't really share it because it didn't show anything new. But it's called Jitsu Squad. And so it's a game available on consoles already, but the arcade version is very different. It has the Samurai Pizza Cats in it. And then just the way that the game plays, the enemies are far less spongy than they are in the console version. And so that's a game that I've been thinking about getting to. It's just still not out yet, and it wasn't shown at this event. So we'll see. Hopefully soon. Hopefully this summer that game will finally be there. But would it be nice to see more beat 'em ups? I think so. The beat 'em up is one of my favorite genres. I always enjoyed coming across a beat 'em up when I was younger. Like whether it was Double Dragon or Knights of the Round, Alien vs. Predator. Trying to think of some others. I mean, I've had our Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, obviously, The Simpsons. Yeah, so there's. I would love to see more beat 'em ups make a comeback, but so far, yeah, it's. I think it's just because fighters are an easier sell to audiences than beat 'em ups are. You know, I have the newer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which just came out on console, and it's always done okay, but it's never been like, whoa, that made a ton of money. And so I guess it seems like more players are drawn to one-on-one fighters, but again, I would love to see more beat-em-ups. I agree. So, yeah, like I said, I have been seriously considering getting Jitsu Squad just because, well, I have a 4-player EXA Arcadia cabinet, and I need more 4-player games on it. And to me, it seems like... I'll mute this so I'm not talking over myself. But it seems to me like that would be a great fit. And so this is kind of the same thing. It's just the attract mode. Again, very, very early on this. Not 100% sure yet all the changes that will be entailed there. But I know there's quite a few people that are excited about this because they were big fans of Rage of the Dragons. One thing that they're pointing out here is that Evoga, I think they were called, the original creators of this game. They sold the IP off I'm not sure if they're even in business anymore. But Pico Interactive now owns the IP to Rage of the Dragons. But this version will be much better than that version that was released to Steam a little while ago by Pico. So this will be a proper nod to the game and include a bunch of enhancements that, like EXA Arcadia likes to do, as opposed to it just throwing it out there for a quick buck. Which, from what I've been told, the Steam version of the recent Steam version of Rage of Dragons was just kind of a quick cash grab. Now, here's another one that I guess we'll get that ready there. But this one, I mean, this one seems to be mixed on reactions there. You can say in chat how you think about it. I had fun with this. I got to play it at Amusement Expo. No, it doesn't look like a modern fighter like Tekken 8 or anything. Obviously, it's going for the retro style. I mean, I'm always a little bit conflicted about that. I mean, I love retro games, but at least in the arcade, is what I've observed is the newer the graphics look, the better it seems to do. But the gameplay on this one is a lot of fun, and this is also a very easy game to play. It only uses 2 buttons. You still can do combos, and you can even pull up a menu that shows you what combos to do. I think that's shown. So here's the video from my Amusement Expo version. And again, early, you can see that there are squares where they'll probably fill it in with additional martial arts and characters that you can choose from. On this, I was playing as this art there, which name I'm forgetting now, and then Eric Show of EXA Arcadia was playing on the other one, and I think he just took it easy on me to be nice, as I had never played this before. Now, this is going to be coming out on Steam, but it's not out yet, and so it's in development still for both PC and arcades. And again, it's not a strong looker. To me, this reminds me of a game that looks like it came from the Atari Lynx. Like the way the pixels are drawn and the colors, the way that the colors are used, is very much like the Atari Lynx. I have no idea if that's what the developers were going for, but yeah, this should be a budget release. So this is not going to be a game that's going to cost you $1,200. It may only cost like $500 or $600, which again is something that somebody like me will be paying for, and not you as the user would pay like 25 cents, 50 cents, or something like that. I'd be shocked if anybody was going to be charging $1 for this one. But it's just fun, and that's something that EXA's wanted to do for a while. They've wanted to have fighting games that appeal to hardcore gamers, but also games that appeal to casuals that just are walking through a Dave & Buster's and see something that like this. And so you choose one event, you choose the style, and then you just kind of go through until you've been knocked down a certain number of times. And so that's when once your health bar down there is all the way gone, I think, or sorry, when you have the 2 X's, that's when you've lost, or if your opponent has the 2 X's, that's when you've won. And then I think you can continue on when we were playing versus, and I wasn't playing single player here, but that was my understanding. But again, it was also very, very early, so there might be things that change about it by the time they hit production. I assume this one will be out sometime this year, but this also could be one just depending on how much longer of a development cycle it has. Like the developers might be focusing on finishing the PC version first, and then, but of course, I don't know how much they've given to EXA Arcadia to be working on. Those are some questions I guess I'll need to ask that I hadn't thought about before. But again, if you don't judge it by how it looks, it is fun. And if you know somebody who's just a button masher and they want to go to the arcade, but it's like they don't want to play something that's more serious, like Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo or Tekken 5 or something like that, and they just want to kind of button mash, this is the perfect game for them. Executioner, no, not for there were some like console announcements, like Street Fighter 6 had the Akuma announcement and stuff, but for games coming to arcades, to coming to a place like mine, EXA is the only one that announced anything. And so, yeah, unless I missed something, but at least from what I've looked at on Twitter and everything, and in my email, I have not been sent any tips on anything else. But that wouldn't be too surprising. It's like Taito was there at the show, but they're just focused on Street Fighter 6. They're not really doing anything for Nessica. From what I've been told, Sega's All.net Plus Multi, or APM3 network, is on its last legs, because Sega's just kind of given up over there in that regard. And so, yeah. City of the Wolves will have an arcade release. I had not heard of that one, so I don't know on that one there. So I'll have to do some research. Here's one that did get a lot of attention, and that is a sequel to Chaos Code called Chaos Code Next, or what was it? Next Nemesis Experiment. Oh, let me fix this here. Should have done that beforehand. Of course, if Taito or Sega had announced a new fighter, I wouldn't have any reason to really get excited for it, because the only place that might get it would be Round 1 USA. But it's like they just don't sell those games at reasonable prices. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, I had more than one person ask me if I was interested in Street Fighter 6, but I said, if it's not $10,000 or more, then perhaps. But that's where the conversation basically ended. They didn't want to tell me the price because it was above $10,000. And so, it's just, for most locations out there, those sort of things are a non-starter. Oh, okay, gotcha, Bushin. Like I said, I'll have to look into that. I had missed the news on that one. But Chaos Code Next, yeah, this one definitely is leveling things up for Chaos Code. I have the first Chaos Code here, Chaos Code EXA. It does pretty well. It's my second best performing fighting game. And a lot of people seem to enjoy it because it kind of has a Marvel vs. Capcom vibe to it. No, you don't have the assists in the same way, but just the way that it looks, the way that it plays, feels a lot like Marvel vs. Capcom. And so they're adding some new characters, but they also have more than one new play system. Now, unfortunately, because my Japanese is so basic, I didn't understand 99% of what they were saying. I didn't catch all the details on all these things like Next Strike and I think like a Chaos Cancel or something like that. But I'm going to see if I can get some details from EXA and maybe do like a game guide for English speakers as to, what these new systems are, how they work, stuff like that, so that you can understand more of what this game is adding to the mix. But it looks great. I assume it's going to play better than the first Chaos Code. And so, I would say this tempts me to sell my Chaos Code EXA and put that money towards getting this update. But we'll see on where things go there. There was a mention of Demon Bride X again. We've known about this one since 2021, but there was no footage of it at the show as far as I'm aware. And so hopefully it's coming this year. They basically just said it's still in the works, so don't worry. And so just reading the chat here. I haven't thrown out numbers too much. I mean, my X's don't compete with, like, you might hear it. It's over here on the side. I hear I've got a Maximum Tune 5. Can't really see it very well. But like Maximum Tune 5 DX Plus is my number one game. It was last year, and so far its performance this year has been the number one. I have a bunch of light gun games. I have some other racing games too, and those all do better than anything that has a joystick attached to it. Amongst joystick games, I think it's Minecraft Dungeons Arcade is my best performer, followed by Ninja Turtles, and then the EXA Arcadias, and then like Darius Burst, and then my classic games and stuff. And so the EXAs, they're kind of somewhere in the middle there. I haven't looked up the numbers lately. There's some areas where I'd like them to do better. But also I think it depends on what type of games that you have inside of them. And so like I keep all my fighters in one of the cabinets, and I think that helps them perform a little better. I mean, when it comes to amongst fighting games, it performs really, really well, and performs better than my Marvel vs. Capcom 2 or my Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 or my Street Fighter 2 Hyper Fighting. And so, yeah, that's where it does well. If I was opening up a new arcade, would I still get one? Yeah. Because, again, when it comes to arcade pricing, I don't know how many of you watching have watched a lot of the other videos that I have on the channel here, but you might have seen the Godzilla Kaiju Wars VR. And now, it's a very cool game, very fun, but the price tag is like somewhere around $45,000, and that doesn't include shipping and tax. It's like, for me, anything above $20,000 at this point is very hard to want to invest in. But most of the games in the arcade industry now cost over $20,000. And it's like, if I was going to start over again, I mean, would I still invest into a light gun game, some light gun games, some racing games? Absolutely. Now, I am an unusual arcade operator. I'm one of the very few out there where I have no ticket redemption games at all. I do have a couple of prize machines like crane machines where you can, like a duck catcher and a knobby ball catcher and stupid things like that. But I actually don't even own those. It's somebody else who owns those. And he was actually here earlier counting the coins out of his machines. And we just do a split on them. But I let them manage that, and I just focus on games because that's what I am at heart as a gamer. I love video games. I have some pinball machines and stuff, and I've talked about those a few times on my channel, and they don't do as great as I wish they did, especially for how much they cost. But for what I've discovered is people will play video games if they don't have tickets to distract them. Obviously, if I had some ticket games, those would probably be my best earners just because people love playing those for prizes. But to me, they're not really games. I mean, maybe on a very rudimentary level, but they're not satisfying like a game is to me, like an actual video game is to me. But yeah, most arcade operators, if any other arcade operator was talking about Evo or something like that, they would probably be more into ticket redemption and stuff. And I've been told, without them saying it, but basically been told I'm stupid for not investing more into ticket redemption, or that I'm leaving a lot of money on the table. And I know to some degree I am, but it'll be 16 years that I've been in business this June. And so I think in that regard, I've shown that, yes, you can still make it work with video games and just pure fun. And that's, to me, is more what it's about. But anyways. Yeah, I mean, I do have Neo Geo. I have a King of Monsters too, but every time I put it out, nobody really plays it. With the Neo Geo, what gets played is either Metal Slug or King of Fighters. But that's also partially to where I'm located. There's a lot of my customers are Latino, and so they're always asking for King of Fighters or Metal Slug, and they know those games very well. But most of the other games that I've tried, like Puzzle Bobble or Breaker's Revenge or King of Monsters or World Heroes or anything else like that, doesn't really get played much, unfortunately. Also puzzle games. Every time I've tried like Tetris or Clax or something like that, it doesn't get played. But I put those in other cabinets, not my Neo Geo, of course. Okay, sorry. For the last of the announcements that came out of EXA Arcadia, you have Vanguard Princess R, and it's getting a remake and a remaster. director's cut remaster. And so EXA Arcadia is working with FK Digital, who did the Chaos Code that we just watched. And so, again, I would think this is still very early. I wouldn't be surprised if they might add more frames of animation to the characters or something like that. From my understanding, this is a 2v2 girl fighter. I mean, it's really 1 versus 1 player, but when you pick your team, you get 2 girl characters, I guess. I've never played Vanguard Princess, so I don't know anything about this one. But if you're into all-girl fighters like Arcana Heart 3, then Vanguard Princess R is another one that, and Asuka 120% should fit the bill. But out of all that, that's not the last thing that EXA Arcadia mentioned, and it's been on their website ever since they started their website, is the Fallen Angels Revenge. Now, if you're not familiar with this one, it's a very obscure game because in a way it's kind of a prototype game. By my understanding, it was never finished. It was produced in very small quantities, like less than 100 boards exist in Japan, and maybe got sent around to other parts of the world, but it was originally published by Saikyo, and it was worked on by some of the people who worked on King of Fighters, I think King of Fighters 98. But again, EXA's had this page up since, I think, 2020, but there's just been very few updates on it. And I've had people asking me in comments or emails occasionally, have you heard anything about what's going on with the Fallen Angels? And every time I ask EXA about it, they say, yes, it's still in the works, don't worry. But the problem is that the number of frames of animation on each character, it's over 900, and they are redrawing everything from scratch, and their artists have to do that at so many frames that to keep it true to the original, plus finishing up what hadn't been finished back in 98 or whenever this had originally been developed. That it's a very time-consuming process to do that. And so they're not just up-resing things, they're like redrawing it, but also making sure it looks the same, just works on an HD monitor. And so EXA threw out a little tease that they have, that they are still working on this. They're trying to get it done this year. It's taking its time. And so hopefully it will be... by the time we get to, say, IAPA 2024, which is a giant trade show that happens the week before Thanksgiving, perhaps this will be at the EXA Arcadia booth. But at this point, we don't know anything other than it's still being worked on, and perhaps as they've finished working on some other games, it's being worked on by Team EXA AM6, which they have a lot on their plate. That's where it's just taking some time. But that pretty much wraps up Evo Japan 2024. Yeah, there were some other events like a Taiko no Tatsujin tournament. There was a tournament with Money Puzzle Exchanger on the Neo Geo, and a young schoolgirl whose parents own an arcade in Japan actually won the tournament and kind of blew everybody away. So, hi. Sure. Something else? Or more tokens? Okay. There's 5. Yeah, you're welcome. So, I guess before we close the stream, thoughts, comments, which of these games that you heard about are you looking forward to the most? Is there something else that you would like to see come along from EXA Arcadia? I guess in terms of fighters, very soon Raw Thrills will be releasing a fighter, Marvel Contest of Champions, which if any of you out there have have frequented a Dave and Buster's in the past few years, you've probably seen that one already, but that's finally going to be available for the rest of the industry to grab. I didn't notice anything else different about it other than extra cards, but you're fine on the questions. That's what I'm here for. So on the games, like when it comes to switching the cartridges out, that's something that only the arcade operator can do. But the customers themselves can choose between the different games. And so, I mean, as an operator, if I wanted to, I mean, I've heard of some operators setting, even though they have an EXA board, they'll only put one game in it, because some people, even with only 4 games to choose from, get confused and they don't realize something else that's on there. And so when you have it set to just one game, it's more likely for that game to get played than to have multiple games on it. And so I've thought about trying that more often, but I just haven't really done that yet. Like I've done a thing where I'll have the game boot into one game, but you can always push a menu button and back out to that and then go and choose a different game if you want to. It's just, again, unfortunately, even on like the Neo Geo, a lot of people, when they're walking through an arcade, they're not usually studying the games. They're just, whatever they see, their brain's processing that very quickly, and it's like, do I want to play that or not? And it's just like a 1-second decision sort of thing. And so this is where one reason why I tell arcade developers, like indie developers especially, all the time is please never have an instant where you're on your attract mode that the screen is black, even for a second. Or like 2 seconds, 1 or 2 seconds, because when somebody's walking through an arcade, they can have a pretty quick pace, and if your screen is black, then they'll just be like, huh, it's broken, and they keep going. And so you need something on there all the time. But when it comes to a multi-game, because somebody's walking through an arcade and having that kind of mindset most of the time, they don't realize, this has, Samurai Showdown 5 Perfect plus Chaos Code plus Kung Fu versus Karate Champ. Now, of course, for the most part, they may not even know what any of those games are at all, because they aren't names like Street Fighter or Tekken. But yeah, that's where it's a little bit of a challenge. I'm sure that with the right games and the right names, that it can really draw in attention. Like, which of these games might I be most convinced of grabbing for myself? I mean, in a way, Dojo Masters, just because I get a lot of casuals here, and they might get into that, but at the same time, as I've observed, people aren't always drawn to games that look old. Because they just think, oh, that's an old game that the arcade guy must have thrown into a new cabinet, and not realize that it's a brand new game. Chaos Code next is definitely very tempting for me. Don't know. I need some customers to be like, hey, I'd really like Rage of Dragons. Like, I've never had a customer ask about that game. I've had Breaker's Revenge. I've never really had anybody play it. I don't know how many customers here have ever heard of Asuka or Vanguard Princess. Daybreak Slam is a maybe for me. But like I said, I am definitely looking at Omen of Sorrow or Rising Chaos. And so I guess if that does really well, perhaps this would be kind of like having that, but more kid-friendly type fighting game, as opposed to the more serious, violent one. And so, again, that's one thing that I appreciate from EXA is they're trying to have a broad range, a great variety of products, because that's what you get in an arcade. You don't get one type of customer. You don't get one demographic. And oftentimes people ask me, what kind of people come into your, or who's your target market? And it's like, well, I mean, in a way, it's really young men, teenagers, and such. But at the same time, I see people from all ages and demographics that come in, and so it's kind of hard to say. It's like, well, it's just this one. It's a little broad. Now, obviously, you're not supposed to have super broad target markets, but it's like it's an arcade. it does kind of appeal to everybody. And so, yeah, let me know in the comments below on stuff like that. Just catching up on the comments here really quick. Thank you, Bushin. I appreciate that. As I mentioned here, I am going to be doing several I'm doing a whole video series on the EXA Arcadia Arc 1 cabinet. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some basic stuff. And this is part of the deal that I worked out with EXA Arcadia. And so I'm going to have a video how to change out cartridges, which for any arcade operator, that's going to be a no-brainer. But for maybe somebody who's like a collector, just getting into it, or just getting into the arcade business, maybe they don't know for sure. And so I'm going to have that. I already have one video ready to go. I'm just waiting on EXA's approval to publish it. But it's just kind of an overview of what the cabinet's like. But I already shot a video where I swap out the coin door and how to do that. I did a video on changing the monitor. So when I got the cabinet, it was in a horizontal position, and then I take that out, put it into the vertical. And so stuff like that are going to be part of that video series. But also just anything else that's maintenance related. If there's something that's on your mind that you'd like to know about, I'll see what I can do. If you haven't seen it before, I did a video a while ago on Cruise and Blast when the lights inside of the LED lights inside of the monitor itself went out. And so I had to pull that thing apart, replace the lights, put it back together, and put it back in the machine. Took like 4 hours, but I sped the video up so that it wasn't quite so long. But yeah, I've been wanting to do more things like that. I just need to find the time sometimes. Actually, I guess one thing I could probably do soon is I need to get a replacement gun for my Aliens Armageddon. One of the guns just completely crapped out, but they're like $450 a piece. And that's another reason why arcade machines are very pricey. It's like when you look at pricing of components, it sucks these days how much they charge for certain things. Like Time Crisis, if you want to get an original Time Crisis gun, well, save up your pennies because they're like $800 or more each, or even reproduction ones. But anyways, those are the announcements of new video arcade games that are coming to hopefully an arcade near you. If you're not an arcade operator, but you do have an arcade near you and you want to see one of these games, what I would suggest is you go in and you nicely ask those who are in charge, the management, and be like, hey, would you guys consider getting this? Now, some arcades may ignore what customers ask for, but other ones might be open to that sort of thing. There are some arcades in the United States that do have an EXA. No, it's not super widespread like all over the place, but if we went to Arcade Belgium, and you go to EXA Arcadia on where to play, they actually have a map. Oh, NPC Cobalt. I'm sorry to hear that. I had heard that the round one had an EXA there, but I wasn't aware that they just removed it. That sucks. But as you can see from this map here, there are a few locations out there. I mean, yes, there are some places, like there's none in Australia or South America. And like here in the United States, it's a bit spread out. It's like, here's where I'm at right now. And so I'm able to say, it's like, hey, within Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado, Montana. I mean, I guess there is an EXA Arcadia in Wyoming, and I think is that Cheyenne? Yeah. And I actually I've met the guy that runs that there, so I guess if you're in the Midwest, that's your closest one there, or down in Arcade UFO does have it, but yeah, it's like kind of surprising that there aren't more in California at this point. But of course, this is also a list that is maintained by Xavier at Arcade Belgium, and he just knows what he's told. And so there might be more EXAs out there than he knows about. He just needs to be reported on. But he maintains a great list. He has a bunch from Japan, so that's obviously filling up most of it. Like here's one in Japan, in Tokyo, the Takadano Baba Game Center, Mikado, and Oasis Plaza. And look at how many, they have 22 EXA games. They have almost all of them. But then there's one place in Korea, one place in Mexico, Spain, UK, and then a few in the US. Arcade Galactic's my spot. And then Lost Ark are video games in North Carolina. They've got the most here in the United States. So they're really going for it. And so, again, it's like, yeah, you just need to, if you're a gamer out there and you do have an arcade near you, let them know. And but also follow up with it. You know, I've had many people over the years come into my arcade and say, oh, I wish you had this game. And there was a time when I was very new where I would actually do that. One person would ask for a game and I would get it. Sometime there was a couple of occasions where I did something. It was cheap, fortunately, to get. But then, I never saw that person again. It didn't do very well. And so it's like, if you're going to go into an arcade and ask for something, have the intention of actually going and playing it and putting money into it. Then if it makes money, then arcades will get it. That's as simple as it is. I know it sounds greedy, but it's like we need to be able to keep our doors open. And to do that, we need to make money. And to make money, we have to have games that bring people in and people play. You know, I can have the coolest game ever in my arcade, but if nobody ever puts money into it, why am I going to have that? It just makes no sense. And so that's why a lot of arcades have redemption, is because, yes, they're stupid games, but they make money. So you can't argue against that because they help keep the doors open. But I do post updates to X pretty regularly, so maybe I'll have to see if there's an issue there. But yeah, thank you all for watching. Arcade Heroes, again, is on pretty much every social media site that's out there. I'm on Facebook. We're on Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, of course. I post stuff on LinkedIn, although I need to make an Arcade Heroes page on LinkedIn as well. We have a Discord server. We have a Guilded server, which is kind of like the Discord one, but it has forums and it has a couple of other features that I like on there too. And so, yeah, if you want to stay in touch, just go in there, but be sure to comment on anything that you're interested in. And thank you all again for watching, and we'll see you out there in the arcade wilds, and hopefully with another live stream sometime soon. Don't know when the next one might be, but do stay tuned for more videos. They're always going to be coming. We'll see you guys around.